How do you run 42,000 cows on land bigger than New York City just minutes from Disney World? How does a ranch use alligators to guard endangered birds? And how is Florida's largest cattle operation also fighting suburban sprawl and winning? This is Deseret Ranches, a 300,000-acre empire of beef, wildlife, and bold ideas. What happens here will change how you think about ranching. Subscribe to Digital Papyrus for more stories that uncover the hidden giants of America. Deseret Ranches began with an ambitious vision on untamed land. In 1950, a 50,000-acre tract of cut-over timberland and scrub was purchased southeast of Orlando to establish a cattle operation. Early managers faced the challenge of turning this wild, low-quality grassland into productive pasture. But they succeeded. Incredibly, the ranch's acreage quadrupled within only a few years after founding. Over subsequent decades, Deseret Ranches kept expanding by acquiring adjacent lands. By the late 1990s, it had grown to over 300,000 acres of contiguous ranch land, roughly 50 miles by 30 miles of old Florida range, an area about the size of New York City in land area. From the start, the ranch's founders saw agriculture as a safe, long-term investment and a source of food security for the region. They believed that well-managed farms could preserve value over time and even help feed people in times of need. This guiding vision led Deseret to prioritize solid land stewardship and steady growth. Throughout the 1950s and 60s, as Central Florida remained mostly rural, the ranch steadily improved its pastures and infrastructure. Long before Orlando's theme parks or the Kennedy Space Center arrived, Deseret Ranches was raising cattle and citrus here and learning how to thrive in Florida's environment. By 1970, the ranch was already among Florida's largest, and by 1997, it was noted as possibly the world's largest beef ranch by acreage. In those years, the land was said to be worth nearly $900 million, though the ranch has always been privately held and doesn't publicly disclose financial details. Importantly, Deseret Ranches was not established as a hobby or a tax write-off. It's a for-profit working ranch that pays taxes and reinvests in improving the land. From its humble start on cut-over scrub, the ranch grew into a Florida cattle empire guided by patience and prudent management.
A cowboy on horseback herds cattle across the wide pastures of Deseret Ranches, which maintains one of the largest cow-calf herds in the nation. Today, Deseret Ranches is renowned for its massive cattle herd and efficient operations. The ranch runs approximately 42,500 mother cows, a herd size that places it among the largest ranches in the United States in terms of cow-calf operations. In fact, Florida's entire beef cattle population is about 883,000 head, and Deseret alone accounts for roughly 5% of the state's beef cows. This single ranch is a heavyweight in U.S. ranching. It's often cited as the most productive cow-calf ranch in the country. To manage such numbers, the ranch is divided into 14 separate units or sub-ranches. Each unit has around 3,100 cows and is run almost like a standalone ranch with dedicated pastures and crew. Remarkably, a single cowboy can be responsible for roughly 1,200 head of cattle, using horses and modern tools to tend the herd. Cowboys, ranch hands, and their families actually live on the property. About 90 ranchers and families reside on the ranch in several small communities. This human element gives Deseret a classic cowboy culture vibe, even as it operates on an industrial scale. Annual calf production is enormous. Each year's calf crop, tens of thousands of calves, is sent off to feedlots in the Midwest and Great Plains to be finished for beef. In the year 2000 alone, the ranch shipped about 16 million pounds of calves to market. These figures illustrate why Deseret Ranches is a cornerstone of Florida's cattle industry and a significant player nationally. The cattle at Deseret are specially adapted to Florida's semi-tropical climate. Florida can be hot, humid, and buggy, tough on typical beef breeds, so the ranch developed its own cattle breeds over time. The herd is largely a mix of hardy Brahman, Zebu cattle crossed with Angus, Simmental, Red Pole, and South Devon breeds. These crossbreeds can better tolerate Florida's heat, humidity, and pests while still producing quality beef. Cattle health and welfare are priorities in the operation. The ranch practices humane handling and even has plans to protect the herd during hurricanes and tropical storms. This combination of scale, efficient management, and breed innovation has made the Deseret herd both uniquely Floridian and highly productive.
Challenges on the range and resilience. Running a ranch of this magnitude isn't without challenges. Over 70-plus years, Deseret Ranches has weathered environmental, agricultural, and economic trials and learned to adapt at each turn. One major challenge is Florida's environment itself. The state's climate swings from dry winters to torrential summer rains, and much of the ranch land is flat, low-lying terrain. In heavy rains, pastures can flood, and in dry spells, water becomes scarce. To address this, the ranch invested in an extensive water management system. They constructed large retention reservoirs and ponds on the property to capture storm runoff and hold it. One 500-acre reservoir known as Jug Island was built in the 1990s to naturally filter and clean water before it leaves the ranch. This project was so effective at improving water quality that it won the Florida Commissioner of Agriculture's Environmental Leadership Award for water conservation. The ranch has since added additional retention areas, like a new East Point Reservoir, to create a network of wetlands that protect against flooding, improve water quality, and double as wildlife habitat. These efforts go above and beyond legal requirements, purely as a proactive measure to steward natural resources. Thanks to this planning, even Florida's wild rainfall doesn't stop the ranch. In fact, water leaving the property is often cleaner than when it entered. Another challenge has been disease and pests, especially in the citrus groves. In recent years, Florida's citrus industry has been devastated by diseases like citrus greening and citrus canker, which kill orange trees. Deseret citrus operations were not immune. The ranch had built up 1,600 acres of orange groves, about 200,000 citrus trees, mostly Valencia oranges, for juice since the early days. After all, cattle and citrus is in the ranch's name. But with the onslaught of greening disease in the 2010s, many citrus farms in the region shut down. Deseret Ranches has seen citrus yields decline and has had to adapt by diversifying into other crops, as we'll discuss. They continue to care for their remaining groves and have experimented with disease management, but the challenge of keeping citrus viable is ongoing. Florida's wildlife can be another test of ranch operations. Feral hogs, for example, root up pastures, alligators lurk in watering holes, and deer can compete for forage. Rather than fight nature, the ranch chose to work with it, investing in robust wildlife management programs, more on that in a later section. By hiring a full-time wildlife biologist and implementing controlled hunting and habitat projects, Deseret turned some wildlife conflicts into opportunities, like offering limited hunting permits for hogs and deer, which provides both population control and ranch income. This approach has largely mitigated what could be a major challenge in a state known for its gators and wild hogs. Perhaps the biggest long-term challenge, however, is population growth and development pressure surrounding the ranch. Deseret Ranch sits in the path of Orlando's expansion. Suburbs and highways are steadily creeping towards its borders. As Central Florida's population booms, there's constant pressure to convert ranch land into housing and strip malls. The ranch's response has been resolute. For over 70 years, Deseret refused countless offers to sell off pieces of land to developers. Instead, the ranch owners took the initiative to plan ahead for inevitable growth in a responsible way. In 2013, Florida's governor invited Deseret Ranches to collaborate on a regional task force for future transportation corridors, recognizing that the ranch's land would be key to the area's development. Ranch managers worked closely with Osceola County officials to craft a long-range master plan for one large section of the property, known as the North Ranch Sector Plan. This plan, finalized in 2015, maps out a 70-year vision for how parts of the ranch could gradually urbanize in an orderly, environmentally conscious way. It designates specific areas for future communities and commerce while setting aside about 25 to 30% of the land for conservation and water storage to ensure green space and ecosystem health. The ranch even partnered with a developer on an early phase project called Sunbridge, which will someday make homes, farms, and high-tech research facilities on former ranch land, all designed around themes of agriculture and sustainability. By proactively engaging in smart land use planning, Deseret Ranches turned the challenge of urban sprawl into an opportunity. Rather than succumb to piecemeal sprawl, the ranch is shaping growth to protect what makes Central Florida special: its water, wildlife, and quality of life, even as development eventually comes. This careful balancing act has earned praise from local leaders. In 2024, when the ranch's holding company petitioned to annex 52,000 acres into the city of Orlando for future planning, Orlando's mayor commended Deseret as responsible landowners with a 70-plus-year vision plan on responsible and sustainable growth. It's rare for a ranch to influence regional planning to this extent, and it speaks to Deseret's determination to address challenges decades in advance. Through floods, droughts, diseases, hurricanes, and growth pressure, Deseret Ranches has proven remarkably resilient. Its strategies, innovate in operations, work with nature, and plan ahead have turned challenges into just another part of the ranch's ongoing story.
While cattle is the cornerstone, Deseret Ranches today is a diversified agricultural enterprise that stretches well beyond beef. In fact, the ranch proudly calls itself a multiple-use operation, managing a mosaic of agricultural and natural resources simultaneously. Citrus groves have long been a part of the ranch. As mentioned, about 1,600 acres of oranges, mostly Valencia, are grown, yielding juice oranges for Florida's OJ industry, and some fresh market tangerines and tangelos. The citrus groves are interspersed among pastures, which actually benefits both. Cattle graze up to the edges of irrigation canals, and the groves get pollination help from the wildlands around them. However, with citrus hit by disease, this enterprise is now smaller than it once was. In addition to citrus, Deseret Ranches cultivates row crops and sod on portions of its land. Roughly 1,100 acres of farmland under pivot irrigation are used to grow various crops, often in rotation. Some fields produce improved pasture grasses and silage to feed the ranch's cattle. Other fields have grown vegetables and grains. Everything from potatoes and corn to soybeans, sorghum, and even cauliflower has been tried on the ranch's irrigated plots. Notably, sod farming, growing grass turf for landscaping, is a successful venture here. Sections of the ranch are leased out to sod producers who harvest grass for use in yards and along highways. The fertile soil and warm climate allow multiple sod cuttings per year, making it a profitable use of the land. These farming endeavors diversify the ranch's income and make sure no acre sits idle. As the ranch says, they look for additional opportunities to capture value from the land, and if that means growing cucumbers or turf grass in addition to cows, they're willing to do it. Timber and forestry are another facet. Scattered across Deseret's vast acreage are stands of southern pine, cypress swamps, and hardwood hammocks. The ranch selectively harvests timber following a practice of natural regeneration, meaning they allow forests to reseed and grow back for decades before cutting again. Pines are periodically thinned for timber, and the ranch even harvests naturally occurring palmetto palms for the landscaping market. Palm trees are plentiful on the property. Rather than let extra palms go to waste, they dig some up to sell to nurseries and developers who need mature palms for new landscaping. The approach is conservative. Timber is harvested at a sustainable rate, ensuring the ranch's woods continue to provide wildlife habitat and beauty. In fact, if you fly over the ranch, you'll see a true patchwork: green forests, open prairies, orange groves, and fields, reflecting the multiple uses of the land at any given time. Deseret Ranches also takes advantage of some unique Florida resources beneath the soil. Beneath parts of the ranch lie thick deposits of prehistoric seashell beds. Over millions of years, these fossilized shells formed a hard aggregate that is excellent for construction. The ranch permits contractors to mine shell rock on site, digging as deep as 50 feet to excavate shell material. The shells are crushed and used as road base for building highways and roads across Florida. This shell mining operation turns what was ancient seafloor into a modern commodity, all within the ranch's property. It's another example of how diversified the business is. They're not just selling beef, but literally selling the ground underfoot in a managed way. The ranch also generates income from hunting leases and permits, allowing limited guided hunts for deer, turkey, and hog on the property, as a way to both manage wildlife populations and bring in fees. One of the newest and most forward-looking enterprises at Deseret Ranches is solar energy farming. Florida's sunshine is as abundant as its rain, and in the past few years, the ranch has partnered with utility companies to put some of its wide-open acreage to work generating clean power. Florida Power and Light, the state's largest electric utility, approached the ranch about leasing land for solar arrays. After careful study to ensure it wouldn't interfere with cattle or environment, Deseret agreed. In 2019, the first of several utility-scale solar farms was installed on the ranch's property. Vast fields of solar panels now soak up the Florida sun on parts of the ranch that were previously unimproved scrub. As of 2021, there were 3 solar fields operating and 2 more planned, for a total of 5 solar sites on the ranch in the near future. These solar farms feed renewable energy into Florida's grid and represent a new revenue stream, through land leases, for Deseret. Ranch managers call it a really good working relationship. The solar panels quietly generate power while cattle continue to graze nearby, and nothing is permanently lost from agricultural use. Embracing solar energy aligns with the ranch's sustainability ethic, and it proves that even a 70-year-old cattle outfit can innovate with the times. Rows of solar panels on Deseret Ranch land, part of a partnership to host 5 solar energy farms on the property. These panels generate clean power while cattle graze the surrounding lands. All these operations, cattle, citrus, farming, timber, shell mining, sod, and solar, make Deseret Ranches a diversified powerhouse in agriculture. The ranch likes to say it fulfills many functions at once, producing food, producing raw materials, managing habitat, and even producing energy. With about 80 to 90 full-time employees on site, Deseret runs like a small town dedicated to agriculture. It has cowboys, citrus grove crews, mechanics, agronomists, and even wildlife and natural resource specialists all working together. This diversity not only provides multiple income streams, but also buffers the ranch. If cattle prices drop or a citrus disease hits, the ranch still has other ventures to carry it through. That's been a key to its longevity.
Far from the stereotypical rancher image of use it up and move on, Deseret Ranches has earned a reputation as an environmental steward. The philosophy has always been that productive agriculture and conservation can go hand in hand. Given the ranch's enormous land holdings in an ecologically sensitive state, Deseret's managers feel a responsibility to preserve wildlife and natural systems even as they raise cattle and crops. One striking fact is the sheer abundance of wildlife thriving on the ranch. Surveys have documented over 350 species of wild animals, including nearly 250 species of birds living on Deseret Ranch's land. This includes iconic Florida fauna like white-tailed deer, Osceola wild turkeys, bobcats, and American alligators, as well as rarer creatures such as the threatened wood stork, sandhill crane, bald eagle, and snail kite. The fact that such biodiversity flourishes alongside active pastures is no accident. It's the result of deliberate habitat management. Deseret Ranch maintains a careful balance of pasture, wetland, and forest on its acreage. Instead of clearing and draining all the land, the ranch has preserved large wetlands, left wooded tracts intact, and created what they call a mosaic landscape. From the air, you see patches of green flatwoods, dark cypress swamps, open marshes and prairie, interwoven with the grassy cattle pastures. This patchwork design means wildlife always has corridors and refuges, even while agricultural activities go on nearby. A wood stork forages at one of the ranch's wetlands. Deseret Ranches created a safe nesting island that hosts hundreds of wood stork nests, making it one of Florida's largest rookeries for this endangered wading bird. The ranch's team includes a full-time wildlife biologist and natural resource manager who monitor animal populations and advise on land use.
One of their proudest achievements is the creation of a wood stork rookery on the property, essentially a man-made nesting sanctuary for an endangered wading bird. Some years ago, ranch managers noticed that wood storks, big, prehistoric-looking white birds, needed secure nesting areas. In response, they built an island in the middle of a pond and dug the water around it deep enough to create a moat. They then encouraged alligators to inhabit the pond. The gators patrol the moat and keep raccoons and snakes away from the birds' nests on the island. The result has been astonishing. That little island turned into one of the largest wood stork rookeries in the state, with 400+ nests each spring protected by the alligator moat. This innovative solution cost the ranch little, but had huge conservation impact. Wood storks and many other water birds now safely raise their young on the ranch each year. Birdwatchers would be amazed to see thousands of egrets, herons, and storks roosting in those trees during nesting season. And importantly, this was done voluntarily by the ranch, without any government mandate or funds, purely out of an ethic of doing what's right for the environment. Water conservation is another pillar of Deseret's sustainability efforts. We discussed the large reservoirs and retention ponds built to control water flow and quality. The ranch also takes care with groundwater, for instance, using canals to capture rainwater and high-tech irrigation systems to minimize waste in the citrus groves. They've installed microjet sprinklers that deliver water right to the base of each tree and soil moisture sensors that guide when to irrigate, ensuring they only use the amount of water absolutely needed. In the row crop fields, center pivot irrigation is used because it's the most water-efficient method for large fields. Excess runoff is collected by drains and routed back into the reservoir canals, forming a closed-loop system that recycles water and prevents fertilizer from polluting the watershed. Thanks to measures like these, even though the ranch sits over an important aquifer recharge area, its impact on regional water resources has been positive. It actually supplies water to nearby communities. In one case, Deseret Ranch was able to sell surplus reservoir water to the city of Cocoa, Florida, to boost municipal water supply. This is a testament to how well they manage and store water on the ranch. In terms of everyday practices, Deseret Ranch has embraced many sustainable ranching techniques. They rotate cattle through different pastures to avoid overgrazing, allowing grass to recover and also reducing erosion. Controlled burns are used in some areas to maintain healthy rangeland and prevent wildfires. The ranch avoids overstocking animals, keeping the herd size in balance with what the land can feed naturally. Even energy use on the ranch is getting greener. Besides hosting solar farms, they use solar-powered pumps in remote pastures and are exploring renewable fuel options for farm equipment. It's clear that for Deseret, sustainability isn't just a buzzword, it's a way of life that's been ingrained for decades. As the ranch leadership puts it, when you plant, nurture, and harvest for a living, you learn to appreciate natural systems and understand that your livelihood depends on the health of the land.
One of the most remarkable aspects of Deseret Ranches is how it approaches the future. Sitting on 450 square miles of land in a rapidly growing state, the ranch is literally an anti-sprawl champion by virtue of its continued existence. If not for the ranch, much of this land might have already become a sea of suburban subdivisions. Instead, it remains open range and habitat. But the ranch owners know that change is inevitable over the next 50+ years. Rather than resist it blindly, they are actively shaping the future to prevent unchecked sprawl. Map of Deseret Ranch land in red and yellow in central Florida, showing designated future development areas, Sunbridge and North Ranch Sector Plan, and large conservation and agriculture zones. This long-term plan is aimed at avoiding haphazard suburban sprawl by planning growth in a controlled way. The cornerstone of this effort is the North Ranch Sector Plan, a long-range land use plan created in partnership with county planners. This plan looks out to the year 2060 and beyond and envisions how a substantial part of the ranch could gradually urbanize while protecting environmental resources and cattle operations elsewhere. Under the plan, about 133,000 acres of ranch land in Osceola County
are set aside for mixed-use development in the far future, but with important caveats. Roughly 29% of that area will remain conservation lands and 13% for agriculture and water reservoirs, even when the rest is developed. In other words, any new communities built on the ranch's property must include preserved wetlands, wildlife corridors, and working farmland by design. The plan also coordinates major infrastructure like new highways and transit corridors in advance, so that development happens around planned town centers and transportation links, not in a scattershot way. By doing this, Deseret Ranches aims to prevent the kind of sprawl that plagues many fast-growing regions, where growth leapfrogs without adequate roads or regard for ecosystems. A tangible example is the Sunbridge development, shown in yellow on the map, which is the first piece of the plan. Sunbridge will take a 19,000-acre portion of the ranch and over the next 20 years gradually build neighborhoods, schools, businesses, and even high-tech research facilities themed around agriculture and conservation. It's projected to eventually have 37,000 homes and 20 million square feet of commercial space, but arranged in a thoughtful way with green belts and even working farms integrated. The idea is to make it a model community that coexists with the ranch ethos, not a typical subdivision. All the while, huge swaths of the ranch around it will stay undeveloped to serve as buffer and habitat. In fact, Deseret intends to keep ranching on much of its land indefinitely. Only select areas near existing growth will be converted to towns. And even then, the ranch has insisted on standards that maintain quality of life and environmental integrity. Local governments have lauded this approach. It's seen as a win-win. The region gets planned growth where it's needed, and in return, 500,000 people, projected by 2080, will have communities that still respect nature. Meanwhile, the ranch and its open lands will form a permanent bulwark against chaotic sprawl. In a recent annexation proposal, the ranch's management emphasized that conserving natural resources is always the first consideration in their planning. This statement underscores how unusual Deseret Ranches is. It's a major landowner actively championing smart growth and conservation, when it could simply sell out to the highest bidder. For now and the foreseeable future, cattle will keep grazing and wildlife will keep roaming over most of Deseret's acreage. But if and when development knocks on the door, the groundwork is laid for growth that adds value instead of sprawl. It's a forward-thinking legacy that the ranch is building, just as important as its legacy of beef or oranges.